I'm trying to figure out what's real in this whole game and how many layers are actually at play. We have these convoys and these protests going on, not in the US, of course, which is frustrating, but Austria, Australia, 2 million people were meeting. And I think even though it might be being used, I think it's generally a good thing because I think humanity, with the human spirit, is going to eventually cut to the chase and realize that this entire world is a deception and we need to get ourselves together and get our world together, and the system and the information exchange needs to be more honest. But the game being played is much bigger. So even if we are able to get some awareness going about like these vaccines, so the CEO of, Moderna is like stepping down. They're all like getting rid of their stock. Like it looks like that's going to be exposed. It's coming out that, a lot of these people are sick that got the vaccine and all this stuff, and so many people are realizing that that indeed is a big scam. I can see them all wanting to blame, and just like we blamed Hitler for World War II, even though millions of people just went along with the program and literally like shot their fellow man into a ditch, in the back of the head, or threw them into another isolated area in a camp, or whatever they went along with. We have these famous doctors. I'm bad with names, but we point to these doctors that were like psychopathic doctors that murdered their patients and did experiments on their patients. Yeah, but so many went along with people like that. And, we're hearing stories now, these doctors and nurses just went along with the program. All these people were put on respirators, which is what killed them, I think, partially. Many of them, they were on drugs that already made them very weak. I take a supplement called GABA sometimes, which is a relaxant, and it's actually really great to have at night if you're having trouble sleeping. For anyone out there, GABA, get the powder and just put a little in a drink, because if you overdo it, you literally get so relaxed, it's hard to breathe. I have to like, force myself to take deeper breaths or something. So I could see how some of these relaxants they were putting people on. And then I think of that scene in Fight Club where he meets Tyler Durden for the first time. He says, this oxygen comes down. He says, oxygen makes you dumb, It makes you compliant. It makes you happy. He says, look at the placard, the insert on the seat, where they have them in a crash and they're like hugging their legs and stuff and have these smiles. He's like, happy as Hindu cows or whatever. Right? So oxygen makes you more compliant and happy and at peace with your own demise, essentially. And that was probably a truth drop in that movie. I mean, it's so specific. So everybody was put on these respirators, and they made this big fake hubbub about all these respirators. Like, we need more respirators. But I've never heard of respirators in my entire life. It was so weird to me that everybody goes along with these false narratives. Like, they're like, yeah, the respirators. What? Like, what do you know about this stuff? Why do we need respirators? So it looks to me like people have really deep problems, and they're in denial and they're lying to themselves and they're just going to go along with authority. We've been traumatized. We are Stockholm Syndrome patients, each and every one of us in this world. It's a prison within a prison. And so I'm wondering, how does this all play out? Because it's cool to see people getting in these rallies, and I think ultimately it's a good thing. At least something's happening now, and they're talking one-on-one, and maybe soon. But what I'm thinking is, like, we need actual human settlements now. We need people to get off the money system, away from the EMF programming, away from this. I really think all the food is poisoned with this nanographene at this point. And, everybody, if you go detail to detail, they say conspiracy theory. Yeah, I mean, we're within a conspiracy theory so huge that it encompasses where and when we are. It's multi-layered. There's many mystery schools. So even if we start to out the Freemasons, which I just don't see happening, but, they own everything. They're the judges and the jury. So, how do you beat that? Because I almost think that as we start to, for example, I think the vaccines are going to come out, that it was a fraud and that there were problems, and people like Bill Gates are going to be blamed, like Hitler was blamed. Fauci will be blamed. Many figures in history were blamed for these things. But we all went along with authority. That's the real problem. We all just do exactly as we're told. We need to stop lying to ourselves, or we're going to lose ourselves, and we're going to lose everything we cared about. The real fight here is, can you see you're in a prison? A human being has his own property. You don't legally have property. A human being has his own personality. Do you have your own personality, or is it within very constrictive lines of what's going to get you looked at and called out? Because a human being has liberty, and you don't have liberty. None of us do. None of us do. We're in a prison system that I think is supernatural. I think we're going to have to start realizing that there's much more going on. I wrote my book, Out of This World, which talked a lot about Stanislav Zukowski, talking about the Yeti Cine, the sons of Yeti, who he hilariously, and again, his sense of style, everybody misses this because they don't get personality anymore. They don't get style. But he said those were the sons of the Yeti creatures. They gave birth to these horrible human Yeti hybrids that were like the problem and destroying our culture and our civilization and had taken over. And then you have, the Hindus said that it was the jinn. The Indians talk about the jinn. The ancient Mexican sorcerers talk about the predator, and Castaneda, Carlos Castaneda, and you should read his book, talks about the predator, talk about the Anunnaki, but they talk about these other beings, these dark beings who can flatten themselves completely. John Lash and the Gnostics talk about the predators in the form of the archons, so that there's an archonic influence. People talk about extraterrestrials, ETs, which are probably the archons. Okay, reptilians, which are probably the archons. So there's a lot more going on here. I don't know why I'm the only one that says all of the above, because it doesn't really matter. And how is this really going to play out if we keep going detail to detail, group to group? Who's to blame? People are so bad at that. They want to blame one person. No, it's all of us. We all create the human civilization that we want to exist in. We need to start from scratch and get rid of things like the money system, like just by going out and having our own property somewhere and having a settlement of people that trade with eggs, and that's their form of currency for now. And they know what they're eating and putting in their bodies, and they're fishing and hunting and raising their own animals and gardening themselves, growing their own crops from the earth. If you can, eat things like, potatoes and carrots and things that are, tubers and things, roots that grow in the earth, I think aren't quite as absorbing as much of this nanographene that they're spraying. I'm looking outside and all day, it's so bad that here we are, maybe we'll start talking about these vaccines and the mandates and all this craziness. But are we talking about the geoengineering that's right above our heads that I've seen now for however many years, and just, I can't believe people didn't notice that. I thought we were going to have that conversation. What I'm getting at in this video is there's many groups, and this is a labyrinth. This is a maze of information. And in a way, we need to get to the point, and I don't see many people doing that. We need to get to the point. How do we start fixing this? We got to ignore all their craziness and get with humans who want to be human beings. Spread goodwill and peace and live by law, not by what's legal, not by maritime law, which they've got us on, by what's lawful, natural rights, human rights.